On April 9th, 1874, Mary Ellen Wilson testified to a courtroom in New York that her adoptive mom had abused and neglected her severely. She was forced to sleep on a mat by a broken window. She didn't have enough warm clothes during the cold winter months. She didn't have any shoes. She was locked in a closet. She was never allowed to go outside at night. And her adoptive mom would whip her, would beat her almost daily. The abuse continued until a neighbor and a home nurse saw what was going on. And they did what any well-meaning person in 1874 would have done if they wanted to protect children. They notified the American Society for the Prevention to the Cruelty to Animals, an organization established to shelter dogs and cats. You see, it was 1874, and there were no laws, there were no organizations, there were no government entities that were there to protect kids. Thankfully, the ASPCA took Mary Ellen's case to court, and the judge removed her based on the general laws of humanity to ensure that she would be protected for the rest of her life. Now, my guess is that many of you may know of Mary Ellen's case. Indeed, it was the first reported case of child abuse in our country. And over the past 150 years since then, we as a country, we have created a child protection system that has mandated reporter laws and crisis responders and first responders in every community. A child protection system that has a foster care system that is there to protect kids after they've been hurt. Now, while you may know of Mary Ellen's case, my guess is that fewer of you know the history about her biological parents, Frances and Thomas Wilson. They lived in Hell's Kitchen in New York City, and by all accounts that I've read, they were loving and well-meaning parents, but life circumstances got in the way of their ability to care for their young daughter. You see, Thomas was a soldier in the Civil War, and when he died fighting, Frances was forced to take a job. She did laundry in a hotel, and she put Mary Ellen in a boarding house, which was a common practice at the time. But when her financial situation worsened, Frances was no longer able to make child care payments. Her visitation became less and less, and the boarding house put Mary Ellen up for adoption. And it was this adoptive home that led to the case that we all know about. So while this may be an interesting history, why am I sharing about the Wilson family? My hope is that you'll consider with me what it would have looked like if we as a community had come together and provided supports for Frances and Thomas at a time when they so desperately needed our help. What if we had been there to provide childcare and housing and food? What if we had been there when Thomas died and we provided grief support and other supports to help Frances take care of her infant daughter? We can see a glimmer of what might have happened if we look at family resource centers that exist throughout our community that's providing primary prevention. You may know them as family resource centers, family support centers, family strengthening centers, centers of excellence, parenting centers. For our conversation today, I'm going to call them family resource centers. There's about 3,000 in our country. They exist in 29 states. They're in the East and the West, in the North and the South, in the middle of our country. They're in tribes, rural communities, and urban communities. They're in big states like California and Texas and Pennsylvania, and smaller states like Vermont and Kentucky and New Jersey. And if you've been to a family resource center, you know that you've been to just one family resource center because they all look different depending on the needs of the community and the caregivers that are there. But we all share a common purpose, and it's about preventing child abuse. It's about strengthening families. It's really about the community coming together and helping each other take care of our kids, because parenting is tough and we all need help. You can come to a family resource center voluntarily, pretty much any time, to get anything you need to help your children and your families thrive in times of joy and in times of crisis. But it's before a crisis gets so bad. It's before a child's hurt. It's before they're removed. It's before a court intervenes. Family resource centers provide a range of primary and secondary prevention services. Parents and caregivers can walk in and talk to a counselor about a parenting challenge or a family crisis. can join together with other parents and learn how to raise kids and have support, can take a break in our common day area while your kids are in the playroom, enjoying time with other kids, pick up food, diapers, shampoo, join together in a family meal, watch a movie together as a family. There's nothing like that to bring community together. Some family resource centers have phone support lines where you can call 24/7, 365 days a year in order to get help, in order to get support. Families are referred to family resource centers by other families, by teachers, by their doctors, by clergy, by the courts, by lawyers, by social workers and child welfare. Let me explain and share a little bit more about family resource centers by really looking at what primary prevention looks like through the eyes of a client. One of our clients, her name is Annie, and she was a client of Safe and Sound's Family Resource Center. Annie had a tough childhood. She describes her mom as a tyrant who would hit and kick her almost daily. When she was 16, she ran away from home. Eventually, she married a man. They were in love and everything was great, and they had a little boy and they named him Tommy. But soon after Tommy was born, their home became one of violence and destruction. Tommy, as he grew up, he would watch his dad hit his mom. He would listen as he threatened to kill her with a gun. When Tommy turned 12, he pushed and he took his anger and rage out on Annie, and he pushed and he shoved her so hard that she fell down. And it was at that moment that Annie knew she had to end the violence in her life, for herself and for Tommy. She was afraid of him. She was afraid for him. What if he got hurt? A friend had given Annie Safe and Sound's phone number, and she reached out and called. And we were there. We were there to help her put the pieces of her life back together. We were there 24/7. We were her lifeline. And slowly, she came to the center. She came to our drop-in center. She wanted just to be with other families. She wanted to see what kind of services we provided. And as she built trust, she began talking with a counselor, and she shared her story. We were able to enroll her in our more intensive programs. And working with a care coordinator, she was able to get a restraining order against her husband. She was able to find a safe home for herself and for Tommy. Partnering with us, she was able to fill her refrigerator with food, able to get clothes for Tommy to go to school. She also joined together with other parents to learn more skills about how to raise kids. She joined together in support groups so she could share her experiences, so she could create connections in the community with other family members, other community. She joined our therapy and slowly was able to address her own trauma, build her own resiliency as a parent. We were also able to help Tommy to build his resiliency through our playroom, through child therapy. He was able to grow his own social and emotional strengths, his own competencies. And slowly he grew up from being an angry and fearful little boy to being a confident young man. I saw him the other day. He's gone from failing in school to getting A's and B's. He's a star on his school soccer team. He's beginning to talk about college. He'll be the first in his family to go. Annie and Tommy's story is one of hope. It's one of courage. It's about strengthening families. It's about building protective factors. It's about ending generational cycles of violence. And I just have to think, what if Mary Ellen and her parents had had all of these supports? How much brighter her life, her childhood would have been. So when Annie and Tommy came to the Family Resource Center, what did they do? How did they break generational cycles of violence? In essence, when you as a parent come to a Family Resource Center, you're going to work on 5 components that research shows are essential for strengthening families and preventing child abuse, research through the Center for the Study of Social Policy. First, you're going to work on building your resiliency as a parent through counseling sessions, through therapy, how to weather the ups and downs of life, whether or not you've been up all night caring for a sick child or you've just lost your job. Through therapy and other supports, we're going to help build up your resiliency as a parent. We're also going to help build up your resiliency of your child. Through therapy and play groups, we're going to help ensure that they have the social and emotional competencies so that they can use their words, express their emotions. be able to make friends with other kids, other adults. We're going to help build their social and emotional competencies. Next, we're going to partner with you to build and gain your knowledge as a parent so that you understand the ages and stages of life as your child grows up. Through evidence-based parenting programs like PPP, Positive Parenting Program, you're going to learn skills and knowledge about child development. Fourth, we're going to work to ensure that you have social connections through peer support groups, through dinners, through activities. You're going to meet other parents and caregivers in the community so that you know who to go to in times of joy and in times of crisis. And if you're so deeply isolated, maybe because of a mental illness or violence or language barrier, we're going to help even more to build up your connections in the community. And finally, fifth, we're going to help work with you to ensure that you have all the concrete supports that you need in order to keep your kids safe. Food, clothing, shelter, safety. We're going to partner with you, help finding jobs, help finding housing, access to health care. Whatever you need to keep your family safe, all the things that would have been so helpful in the life of the Wilson family. So San Francisco, my community, has deeply invested in primary prevention. We have created a network of family resource centers in our community. And together as a network, we serve more than 15,000 children and parents in every part of our city, every neighborhood, every community in our city. And our investment in prevention is paying off. Over the past 15 years, we have seen a 65% reduction in the substantiated rate of child abuse. We've seen a 73% reduction in the number of children entering our foster care system. These decreases are happening for many reasons, demographics, including a deep investment in prevention. Now, you may be asking yourself, what can you do in your own jurisdiction to help kids, to strengthen families, to build protective factors? If you're a judge and in a family courtroom and Annie came to you seeking a temporary restraining order, could you have asked if she needed counseling, if Tommy needed counseling? Do they need support, childcare, and other support for housing? And if Frances came to you before Mary Ellen had been placed in care, could you have asked whether or not she had all the protective factors that she needed to keep her family safe? When any family comes to you, could you use the protective factors as a framework in determining reasonable efforts to ensure that children are placed with their families before a placement decision is made? And if you're a lawyer and Annie has come to you seeking support and Tommy is in your playroom, could you ask how he's doing in school? If Frances had been there and her husband had just died at war, could you determine whether or not she was eligible for any benefits, health care, housing? And as policymakers, do you have family resource centers in your community? Can you support and help invest in primary prevention, in building protective factors for families? And as community members, what supports are there to help support families? Because we all have a role to play in ensuring that kids are safe. So let me end with this. Imagine if over the past 150 years, we as a country, we as a community had truly invested in primary prevention. I believe we would have more laws, more organizations, more funding, more programs that were developed to strengthen families and build protective factors. We would have communities that were full of family resource centers that were there to protect kids. In so doing, we would be preventing child abuse and neglect before it happens. We'd be ensuring that kids were free from harm before it happens. We'd redefine safety as freedom from abuse, not freedom after abuse. We would be protecting kids with their families, not from their families. And ultimately, we would be ensuring that every child grew up safe, protected, and loved with a family that was safe and stable. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much for partnering to truly end child abuse.